solving a customer problem that you identified from your own user base is still the safest way to build a feature that does not fail.
Why does someone buy? This is the one core question, is why does the other party buy? May it be a business, then they, probably improve efficiency in some way or solve a problem they have.
When you have a lot of smart people working on an open-ended problem, it's very likely that ultimately there will be a commercial use case.
Oh my God, Dios mío, this is, oh my God, Dios mío.
Welcome back to Hotfix. We are back with another special episode, just me and Christoph discussing a topic that is close to our hearts. And with that, I want to start already and asking Christoph, should every product solve a problem?
Hi, everybody. I think every new product manager that starts, or generally every curious product manager, very soon stumbles upon the sentence that problems are in the center of everything that product managers do. It's written in every book. But recently it made me thinking a bit, because there's a couple of very recent features or products that entered the market that became a lot of publicity and that, in my opinion, do not solve an immediate problem. The first example I stumbled upon from that area was Spotify Wrapped. I think is one of the most viral features that exist, but it doesn't solve a problem. No one has the problem of not knowing what artist they listened to in August last year, but still it's extremely successful. I think it exactly achieves what Spotify wants. Another example is ChatGPT as an overall product. I think it solves a lot of different problems, but I do not think that there was a product manager in the beginning writing down a problem statement of what they want to solve with ChatGPT. I think there's a couple of features, a couple of types of features, and maybe over the course of this podcast, we can go through these different types of features that do not solve a problem. However, I still think that solving a customer problem that you identified from your own user base is still the safest way to build a feature that does not fail. So I think that still probably 90% of all the work of product managers should be about solving customer problems. Today, we will talk about a couple of exceptions, these 10% that probably should not solve a problem or still special cases. But yeah, I think it makes sense to dedicate the podcast episode about that. What's your take?
I think it's quite interesting, right? So maybe let me dive into the first example you made, ChatGPT. Because there I think they did solve a problem. They solved one of their own problems. They solved the distribution problem because they had GPT 2.5, I think, at that time, and then GPT-3 already. And it was an amazing product and it worked really well. But you had to somehow go through an API and it wasn't accessible to 99.999% of the people on the planet. And I think here it's a bit more abstract, right? Because I think people did have lots and lots of problems that this product solved. So I don't know, writing creatively, or I don't know what. I'm using the product to solve most of my problems right now every day. So it actually did solve a numerous amount of problems, not just one simple one, but a number of problems. So maybe there was someone at OpenAI saying, hey, we can solve 15 customer problems already with the product we have. We simply don't distribute it in a way that does that. So I'm not even sure if there isn't an underlying problem there or wasn't an underlying problem they did solve there.
Yeah, but very true. I think we need to distinguish between large language models in general and then the abstraction, the product on top of it, which is 100% agree. I think actually ChatGPT solved two big problems for them. One is the distribution problem, but also the RAG problem behind it. So the whole system of how ChatGPT and how OpenAI's model has become so powerful is because of this reinforced learning that they built on top of this user interface of ChatGPT. So that's true. If we only think about ChatGPT, the abstraction, the product on top of large language models, then there's definitely problems that it solves. Most probably only problems for the organizations, not for customers that they already had. So it didn't solve a customer problem. But here I was more referring to this foundational technology of large language models. I think we also need to be a bit careful here because OpenAI is not a classic SaaS company. I do not think that they operated in a space where they had to look into specific efficiency metrics. They were not being evaluated based on the gross margin they had, based on the net revenue retention they had, based on the ARR growth they could showcase. They are intentionally a company that does foundational innovation, that also does open-ended innovation. And therefore, I think it is also a bit hard to compare OpenAI to other SaaS companies there.
But I think there's a lot of competitors that are more comparable, right? I don't know, Anthropic or Perplexity. I think both companies more recently founded, not founded in a intention to be non-profit and work on AI in general, but intention to make profit, to work on these models and solve customer problems in the end, right? I think in the end, why am I picking on this example so much? Because my statement is that even if we are not intentional about a problem, there might be something we solve along the way, right? Maybe we are not sure that there is a problem to solve yet. I think there's maybe other examples we can go into that are, I don't know, luxury brands or things like that. I think this is more targeted, but maybe even there is something, right? Because I think in the end, the bottom line for me for this question is, why does someone buy? This is the one core question, is why does the other party buy? May it be a business, then they, I don't know, probably improve efficiency in some way or solve a problem they have or do something, right? I think they need some, because they need to be motivated to search for a solution, they need to be motivated to test something, they need to be motivated to go through a buying process. It's complex. And then for consumers, there's other motivations why they buy something. So I think you always need to somehow hit that spot. You can't build a product where there isn't a motivation to buy.
Yeah, I agree, because I think for especially these foundational technologies, who buys or what is the commercial product that comes out of it is very often not in the center of how they work. I think also Google is a very great example. Google also has a very large unit that is researching foundational new technology. And I think it was also interesting to see, because apparently they withheld the same technology that OpenAI already had. They also had very capable large language models. And then the release of ChatGPT forced them to also release this foundational technology. And so I think it's a luxury for a company to be able to research in these fields, to work on these open-ended problems, to work on problems that are not aimed at solving commercial problems. So I think we also need to evaluate this a bit.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure that these companies, I do think they still have a commercial goal in mind when building these units. I think there is still somewhere there is a CFO sitting and looking at numbers of how much do we spend on foundational research, and in the last 30 years, how much did this return? In the end, they can't win if they only optimize for the small changes in the organization. And I don't know, if they make Gmail a little bit better and YouTube a little bit better and whatever a little bit better, they will not win in 10 years, because then there's 10 companies that disrupt them fundamentally. So I think commercially, they are forced to innovate on this level as well, so that they stay relevant. Otherwise, others will innovate and they will be gone in 10 years. I think they are commercially motivated to do this. I think there is business goals, there is solving underlying problems beneath these pure technical innovations.
But I think it's in a phase where it's still further away from being commercialized. And this is usually a phase where you do not need product managers. I think product managers are here to combine customer problems with technology.
Maybe let me get to this point. I think this is a very, very interesting point there. Why do you think there is no need for a product manager at that stage?
Because the working on the technology is not grounded in solving a customer problem or in solving a problem that exists yet. I think it's more on the scientific research side, where they intentionally work on open-ended problems, which also I think when you have a lot of smart people working on an open-ended problem, it's very likely that ultimately there will be a commercial use case at some point. That's also why OpenAI, Google, other big tech companies are investing into this foundational technology. But I think that most companies cannot afford that, because they're incentivized, they're evaluated in much more short term. And I think in the short term, applying technology to existing customer problems, this is probably the main task of most product managers, right?
And yeah, I think that makes sense. I was just wondering, because let's say you work on one of those foundational technologies, and let's say there would have been a product manager on, I don't know, Google's Gemini team. Do you think they could have maybe had an opportunity like OpenAI to be ChatGPT is like Googling for some of the people I know that are not in the tech space. When they talk about interacting with a large language model, they say ChatGPT. They say this is the word they use, right? Google lost there. They lost on this opportunity. They had a large language model right on the back of like Translate for years, and they didn't commercialize it like this. Do you think that maybe this is not right, that there was no product manager that has seen this opportunity and has actually said, hey, we need to bring this to market. We need to make sure that we get this in front of users. All the things that we tell startups every time that big tech is just not doing because they, I don't know, they feel safe or whatever it is. Maybe there should be a product manager on the team that sees these things and does these things. No?
Yeah. Most probably this is a problem that is very strategic and very high level. I think it's a very classic example of the innovator's dilemma, as like it is in the textbook. If Google would have released that earlier, they would have just disrupted their main business model for the entire organization. And now they were forced to release it. But yeah, it was too late, because right now, at least that's what I think, ChatGPT is more common in day-to-day language, is more widespread, has more arrived in mainstream, or also in the minds and heads of people who are not directly working in tech. And I think this is always the greatest thing that you can achieve with no technology, that people who are not early adopters, that the mass market adopts it such heavily as they do with ChatGPT.
And yes, but in the end, right, many product managers in many companies are in front of this decision a lot, right? They need to disrupt their own business, or they need to pitch something that would disrupt existing business. And I think most of the time products are only ever going to market because there is a product manager that pitches for this product to be disrupting it. And I think there is actually a great story in one of the Marty King books where he talks about Google and Google search, right? How they themselves were selling ads in the beginning. And then at one point there was a product manager, and this was like a mid-level product manager that came up with AdWords, that came up with the idea of programmatically putting ads in based on who bids highest. And Google said no in the beginning because they were like, no, then we disrupt our business of salespeople going to companies, selling them ad space. And then in the end, this person won, this product manager won with the arguments of this technology being more efficient, better for the market, better for Google in the long term. And they did bring it to market. And they did win search for 20 plus years, and they did win ads for 20 plus years, and now they lost. And they could have done the exact same thing they did with ads 20 years ago today.
Yeah.
But there was no product manager today. Maybe if what you're saying is right, then there was no product manager. It's just tech people doing tech stuff in a lab, and everyone hoping that in the end that someone finds out when it is good enough or whatever, right? But so many times, I think when we try to perfect technology, we never bring it to market. We always find things to do better and things to be more efficient and things to, I don't know, improve. And then we never bring it to market, and then we lose against competition, who doesn't have as much to lose. The OpenAI didn't have an ad business to lose. They didn't have anything to lose. They had product managers on this product because they wanted to build a product. They wanted to build ChatGPT. They wanted to build an ecosystem. They wanted to bring large language models to market. So I think it's probably smart to have PMs in tech teams very early, even if there is no plan for any commercial viability or any product to ship soon, simply to have someone on the team that looks at, does it make sense that we build this at all? Should we continue the research? Maybe this can be a more technical person. Maybe there is a more technical person in the team that wants to be a PM, that wants to look at how this could be viable in the market at one point.
Yeah, great example. So there's a couple of other categories that I think we should go through today. I would just introduce these categories, deep categories that I stumbled upon when I did some researching on that. So we just talked about the first one, which is foundational innovation. We then have three other main areas. One is strategic growth, brand positioning, and experience optimization. Within the strategic growth area, there's two subcategories. One is market expansion. So building a feature that or solving a problem that is not seen in your current customer base. This can be either acquiring another company. This can be building a new feature that extends your feature portfolio. It's still solving a problem, but it's most probably not solving a problem that you see in your current user base. The second category within the strategic growth area is visibility partnerships. We recently had a podcast, I think, with Malte, where we talked about this. And I think a great example for this is the Canva and ChatGPT integration. If you look at the reviews that this integration has, it's horrible. Almost no one finds this integration useful, but it's still, I think, a very successful feature because it has over 5 million conversations on ChatGPT. And I think the problem that they wanted to solve there is not to solve a customer problem so that someone really uses it in their day-to-day lives, but rather to gain visibility, to be integrated in ChatGPT so that Canva is perceived as on the frontier of AI. So it doesn't solve a customer problem, but it's still valuable for the company. Let's maybe quickly stay in these two categories: integrating vertically, market expansion, and visibility partnerships.
So I think for the first one, my advice to most people is don't do it. Because why am I saying this? There's only very few companies that can afford to leave their domain and solve something else. Because if you are not in a place where you have almost no churn, you're already upselling your customers into higher tiers. So you have like mobility within your product into higher tiers or more usage or however you build customers, maybe then look at solving for another user group. But 99% of companies are struggling with either their users leaving, or they are not moving up within their product, or they are not using all of the features they already have within their product. And if you look at a Mixpanel or some area in most SaaS companies of usage of features, you will see that there is a small core feature set that is used by most users. And then there is a whole lot of other features that have almost no usage. And then there's a good amount of other features that have zero usage. Why would you start building for this very different user group or for this different area if you don't even understand your customers well enough to only build what works for them? And maybe there is good ideas out there, maybe not your company that should solve them. And I believe it's from experience in the last 10 years, most features that had this intention failed. Like almost every feature that I saw that have been built in a company I worked at with the intention, let's build for this other user group. They are very, very close by. They are just another department that works very closely with the department we already sell to, or I don't know, or it's the same company and whatever. It's all these arguments, all of these features failed. It's so hard because the rest of the company doesn't change. Your sales force still only sells to the user group that you have been selling forever. Your customer success managers don't understand this user group as well as they understand the other user group. So you're suddenly trying to build a new startup in a startup, let's say. It's just, I don't think it works. Most of the times, I think there's very rare cases where you should do it. I would say leave it. If you are working for a user group, solve for them and not for someone else.
Yeah. I think that these types of features have an extremely high risk of failing. And that's also why I think experimentation is very important. But I think there's a lot of great innovations that came out of this space. I think a good example for this is, I don't know how the history for this was, or it's just an assumption from my side, but Spotify breaking into podcasting. I imagine that there was a time where Spotify was only an exploration engine for music. And then they discovered this very adjacent, similar market where they could bring their existing strengths to not only discovering music, but also to podcasts. And now we have this huge ecosystem. I think that Spotify benefits greatly from also offering podcasts. It's a much better, I assume, a much better business compared to music. So I think there's examples where this works. And I also want to bring up a second example where I also do not know 100% of the background, but I think it's an interesting example, which is Notion Calendar. I'm a huge fan of Notion. I think they are solving a great problem, which is documentation and collaboration on documentation. And at least I, as a user, I do not really understand why they acquired a calendar company and integrated that into Notion. I do not 100% understand how this is completing their current offering. It seems that they somehow want to extend their time. There's definitely not the user problem that they solved, because every person who works in an office is already using a calendar. I don't know why they should use a new one. Also, when you use the tool or the product, it's not seemingly better compared to any other calendar tool. It's just a very regular calendar tool where you can do the same things. So yeah, I think there's some great examples, but also interesting what you said, because I think that's a very good observation from reality. And I have similar observations that a lot of companies try to do that because they have very ambitious growth goals. They have very ambitious expectations. And every time they do that, it's extremely risky, and they underestimate the risk that they have to, that extending your feature portfolio requires a lot more work than most people think.
Yes, and maybe the important piece with the two features you mentioned is that they are another problem for the same user group. So in both cases, Spotify still solves for people that listen to things. Let's make it more general. Listen to things through a digital product, right? They were so easy for them to just move the people that already listened to music on Spotify. They listen to podcasts somewhere else. They could just bring podcasts to Spotify, and now the people that listen to music on Spotify could also listen to podcasts on Spotify. They didn't need to acquire a new group of people that is exclusively listening to podcasts and not to music or whatever, right? But I think this is what most businesses do. They're suddenly trying to get a new department or whatever that is very much not related to the people that they already have been working with. I think this is the safest way to extend, is solve another problem for the users that you already have on your platform. Because also then distribution will be easier. Sales already knows these people. Customer success, not everyone knows these people. They know how to talk to them. They understand their problems. And then it will be simpler. But solving for extending your market to other people and groups it's risky. You need to be ready to burn a lot of money. I think this is the case, and you need to be ready to invest a lot. And if you're not ready to, I don't know, for example, hire 5 more engineering teams and spend millions of dollars, you probably shouldn't do it. If you just say, let's build just this one feature and see how it goes, it will not go well. I can tell you today, doesn't matter what you're building, you will fail.
Yeah. And about the second category, about the visibility partnerships, which is basically just about listing your product in directories of other products. I also think that there can be synergies, but most of the time when I'm seeing these synergies, they are not really based in a user problem or customer problem. How do you see that?
I think in the end, what is important there is that many times, because if you look at startups, for example, they behave differently to more established companies because they just try to get their product into the hands of as many people as possible. Very early startups usually build a lot for getting towards into a marketplace or putting their product in the Salesforce marketplace or into an app store or whatever, because they want to solve distribution. And I think this is fine that also established companies do that, because in the end, they solve their problem. Their problem is they want to distribute the product to potential customers, because maybe they have a great product that solves problems for a lot of people, and those people simply don't know this product exists. I think there it makes a lot of sense that they work on distribution. And so, I think this is maybe, as product managers, we too often don't think about the problems we as a company have, and we can also solve those problems. It's fine to solve our own problems, not just our user problems.
Yeah, great. Let's move on to the next category that I think a lot of product managers have already gotten in touch in, at least I have, which is brand positioning. So everything that is related to positioning your brand, where also product work is needed in order to do that. I classified that again into 2 subcategories. One is virality drivers. This is, for example, Spotify Wrapped, somewhere where you are building very delightful product that has the only purpose to go viral, to be shared on social media. And the second sub area, which is simply brand rebrandings, brand refreshes. I think everyone who has worked in a startup has probably experienced a rebrand, and there's also a lot of product or some product work involved at least. And in most of the cases, it's not solving a customer problem. Most of the cases, it's solving, if even, an organization problem. So let's talk about this first category, which is virality drivers. Spotify Wrapped, for example. Any thoughts on that?
To me, it's the same category as what I would call demo features. So in B2B products, we often have features that are demo features that wow people, that are just working really well at like for someone to look at it for 5 minutes, be excited about it, and then want to look in the rest of the product. Maybe the rest of the product is as exciting as what I've just seen, right? Mm-hmm. Similar to me is Spotify Wrapped, right? Spotify Wrapped is something that is, you look at it for 10 minutes, it's very interesting, very exciting for 10 minutes, and then it's like, whatever, right? And then you are just waiting for it for next year again. Is there a fundamental problem we solve? Maybe not. Is there an interest in people in data in general? Yes. I think very similarly, almost every B2B SaaS company builds an analytics part into their product. We always have some type of analytics where people can look at which parts of the product are used or what are the impacts the product has. Most of the times not solving any problem. Maybe no one really needs this. Every B2B SaaS company builds it because for some reason the users are still interested in this data. And I think similarly Spotify Wrapped, it's just on a personal level. I'm very interested once a year what type of artists I listen to or how many minutes, and then I don't know, me and my wife battle each other with who listened more minutes and whatever, right? It's very interesting, it's very fun. Bottom line for me is products like these are fine because it's also good to build something that is fun, right? I don't know, building a tennis racket is I don't know, there is no fundamental problem that everyone needs to play tennis, right? But maybe people have fun playing tennis, so it's fine that there is companies building tennis rackets. So the other area for me is just not just problems, but also wants and needs, or like wants and desires. It's fine to build for those as well, not just to solve fundamental problems.
Yeah. I really like the idea of combining it with demo features because I think that's the equivalent for B2B SaaS companies. I think viral features are very rare for B2B SaaS companies. It's probably more for consumer features, but the equivalent for B2B SaaS companies is when you can have a demo, you can showcase something, and someone seeing the product for the first time thinks, wow, this is great. I think this is a very dangerous space as a product manager. Very often product managers are confronted with, hey, please build this chatbot into our product because this looks cool. I think that's a valid strategy. We just need to be clear that this is exactly the intention behind it.
Yes.
If we if we start to work on a feature and we try to conceptualize a customer problem around that doesn't exist, such as, hey, this is solving time, and then I think the feature is also doomed to fail. If we want to work on a demo feature, a fancy demo feature that should be used in demos to convince customers and deliver a great first impression, that this is also what the feature should be optimized for, and nothing like a conceptualized or invented customer problem around it.
But I do sympathize with product managers who then try to reverse engineer problems into it, right? Because it happened to me so many times in the past that I don't know, there was some feature that was pushed onto me by management and then I had to build it. I didn't really understand why. Maybe it was just a demo feature. They didn't communicate it to me as clearly. And then I go into a meeting with design and engineering and I pitch, we need to build this now. And then they're like, what problem does it solve? And at this point, I was just either I lose them right here or I make up a problem that this solves and we can build this and everyone is happy. So maybe this was terrible execution by me. That might be the case, right? But I think I can sympathize with product managers that just then, I don't know, go into like some discovery theater to then find things that don't exist. And I don't know. I can sympathize, but I agree with you. If we would coin it, this is a demo feature. The problem we solve is our salespeople need something to show that excites people. We solve for our salespeople's problems, not for our customers' problems. In this very instance, this would be a better thing, because then also during discovery, we would talk to our salespeople and not to customers, because we should talk to salespeople at that moment if we build a demo feature for them. And then in the end, if we build something and our sales force thinks this is not very demoable, we failed the task very interestingly, right? We started with trying to build a demo feature, and we talked to customers instead of sales. Then we build something that works well in their day-to-day, and then maybe doesn't work in the demo. I think this happens more often than not.
Okay, and then the last two categories, which are also a bit smaller, but I think also interesting to be listed here, and which is experience optimization, consisting again of two areas. One is performance upgrades, and one is UX delighters. I think performance upgrades is a very interesting category. I think it's something that almost every product manager has been confronted with. And my opinion is performance upgrades do not solve a customer problem unless your company has speed as one of the core value propositions, I would say Cloudflare layer or some maybe AWS, where it really matters that they deliver milliseconds faster or that they optimize in the millisecond space. Second exception is if your app is being perceived as slow. So if customers are complaining, hey, this is loading too slow, or hey, we have performance issues here, then I think it makes sense to invest into performance upgrades. But most of the time, I think it's just some grooming that engineers would like to do. I actually think that most of the time, solving real customer problems should always be prioritized compared to making that page load speed a couple of seconds faster.
Maybe just one step back, because we skipped over the rebranding.
Right.
And I just wanted to ask you because I've experienced, 3 or 4 rebrands in my career now, and I haven't seen a single time where this created significant value for anyone. It was just a lot of work, like millions in salaries spent on this rebrand, because there's engineers rebranding the product and marketing the website. Everyone is rebranding everything. Same thing in the end. I think I've never seen this being a very fruitful exercise. I don't really see the point most of the times. And I think if you're not a giant corporation with thousands of employees that is in need of that, it's probably a waste of your resources. You should probably focus on solve problems rather than rebrand, because your customers really don't care most of the times, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it helps in finding talent, and I think it might help if you have a very consumer-oriented B2B SaaS company. So if you have a strong product-led growth motion where the first impression really matters, then I think it might be helpful. But yeah, you're right. Most B2B SaaS companies probably spend too much time on rebrandings.
Yeah, and I mean, also if you have a strong product-led growth motion, I think the brand usually can be I think almost every existing brand can be positioned well to solve for this. You usually don't need to create a new logo and new colors and new, typefaces. And usually these are the things that happen during the rebranding. And this is what creates all the work, because you need to recreate all your assets and all the creatives. Yeah. And usually your old creatives might be fine. You just need to use different wording, be more concrete, talk to your users, and not about, some general bullshit. Anyways, I think this is, in my opinion, usually a waste of time. And I would say don't do it unless you are Oracle. Oracle for me is terrible, right? So they can maybe get a new brand and sell us AI and whatever, or SAP, SAP. There is these brands that I associate with something that could benefit from a rebrand, but probably almost no one knows your million ARR B2B SaaS company. Maybe you shouldn't care too much.
Yeah. And what's your take on performance upgrades? Have you ever had to prioritize them? Under what circumstances did you prioritize them?
I think I prioritized them a couple of times. They're not that special compared to other features. I think if there is a need for quicker loading time or whatever, build it. If there is no need, don't build it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm very indifferent to them, because I just wouldn't build them. If the product is fast and perceived as fast, why would you optimize for performance?
I just think there's a couple of more complex situations that I was in where someone from the engineering team came up to me. They proposed this initiative of rewriting something, of making something more optimized. And every time when I asked, okay, why would we do that? Then the answer was because it makes the app quicker. It makes loading time faster. And that's, I think, where we need to be very careful. Yes. Because if there's nothing to optimize, then we also shouldn't do it.
Yes. And I think this is interesting, right? Because what you're saying, it speaks more to these code refactorings in general, right? And then we usually ask for a business reason from the product side, and then engineering usually answers performance, even though it might be a lie. Because I think in the end, those refactorings, I think why engineering wants to do it is because they work on some other feature. They are annoyed by how the code looks in one area or the other area because it's, complex to get into, or just annoying work because they have to do things at 4 different places instead of just one. I believe it is the best to find an agreement with engineering that if we work on a feature, you're allowed to refactor the code that is within this area. Yes, maybe you need 20, 30, 40% more time, but you do this technical work while delivering value to the customer. Let's not prioritize just technical work. I think this is just usually not the right way. To me, I think it's the best way, or it works the best if you are finding a way where engineering can refactor code, make things more optimized, make things quicker, whatever, while delivering value to the customer. I think this is the best arrangement for me that works in the real world.
Yeah, I agree.
And then UX, I believe it's just, you need to treat it like every other feature.
Maybe just to give a little introduction, we don't talk about UX in general, but about UX delighters. So these are very playful interactions or elements in your app. A very good recent example, for me at least, is Apple Intelligence. I think they invested a lot into, I'm not able to use it in Europe, but what I saw from videos, I think they're using a lot of these micro interactions to make it look fancy or to make it delightful in your day-to-day work. So these are the type of features that I think do not solve an immediate customer problem, but still it makes a lot of sense in a couple of cases.
Yes, and I think maybe from two different angles. First, like this B2B angle that I'm also coming from, I think I've heard too many times that we don't need to build these very good-looking, delightful products, but I think this is wrong in the first place. I think too many B2B companies only solve for the problem and the use case behind it without looking at, is it usable for the customer? Because I think in the end, also many B2B companies that solve a problem well, the users simply either don't like using the product or they don't understand how they can solve the problem. And then you are not solving a problem if your customer doesn't understand how to use your product to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And it's that simple for me.
I just think that that's two different things though. De-risking on the usability side, making it usable, that's a given anyways, that this has to be done. And I think also we're in a time right now where this has landed in the most mindsets of companies today. The UX delighters that we're talking about here, I think they just go beyond that. They're more than just solving the usability risks. They're really about making the day-to-day interactions exciting and delightful. But I still agree with this has landed too little in B2B SaaS companies. You also see that the best B2B SaaS companies today that is really being talked about, that is really changing how we work every day. Another example is Miro, who also with their latest AI features have released a couple of incredibly nice UI interactions with how they work. And I think that actually B2B SaaS companies should also use that more. It's just really hard as a PM to prioritize that.
And maybe to get to this right, because you said it goes beyond it, right? I think it's just very hard to judge on this scale of how much do we invest in niceness. I don't know if this is the right metric to use there. Where do we stop, right? And I think it's just that most stop too early. That's what I'm trying to say. I think it's very hard to stop too late. I think the crazy part is that this is usually not taking a lot of work. So I've seen many features where we invested a little bit more to make things nicer in like the way we have like interactions on the UI, or I don't know, there is some kind of animations happening or whatever it is that delights, right? Usually not a lot of work from like the engineering side. I think that like the base product, solving the problem usually is much more work. And then we are so excited that this product is finally done. And yeah, I don't know, but it's also so hard because like I think there's this other school of thought that tells you to release as early as possible and that you should get it into the customer's hands right away. I'm very conflicted myself there, and I think it's I don't know if there is this blueprint answer to say always try to delight or always try to get it out there quickly. This is a very nuanced question where you need to judge it one by one. I don't know.
I just think that if it's easy to invest into it, if it's part of your strategy that certain parts of your product, and I think it's very obvious that in certain AI strategies, it is a very strong part of the strategy that it has to delight people, then it's also easier to prioritize that. So, Stefan, I think we could have talked about each of these categories. We could have devoted a whole podcast on. We unfortunately only touched it on the very surface. Maybe we go into more detail in the future. Just maybe a couple of sentences at the end of this podcast. even though all of these problems do not solve very obvious or immediate customer problems, I think one of the most important parts is still that they have a clear why behind them.
Mhm.
And if you as a PM are being tasked with a feature that you call bullshit, where you think this is not solving a customer problem, and it also doesn't have a clear why behind it, then you have to push back.
Mhm.
If it doesn't solve a customer problem, but it's a crystal clear part of the company's strategy and why it's important to build it right now, and it falls into one of these categories, or it also maybe also one of the categories that we now forgot, then I think it still could make sense to work on that. And I think it's extremely important to still look at this crystal clear why behind them.
Yeah, I think that's, I subscribe to this 100%. And I think we can end with this statement. Thanks a lot for listening to the Hotfix podcast again today. Make sure to tune in again for our next episode. Leave a like, leave a comment, and we are very happy that you're listening. And we wish you a very, very good start into this new year.